ਮਾਈ ਰੇਡੀਓ 580 AM ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਭਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਜੀ। ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਡਿਬੇਟ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹੋਏ ਹਾਂ। ਪਹਿਲੀ ਡਿਬੇਟ ਹੈ ਜੀ ਐਡਮਿੰਟਨ ਮਿਲਵੁੱਡਸ ਰਾਈਡਿੰਗ ਦੀ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ 3 ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਇਨਵਾਈਟ ਕੀਤਾ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਆਫ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਜੋ ਇਨਕੰਬੈਂਟ ਨੇ ਜੀ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਟਿਮੋਪਲ, ਜੋ ਰੀ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਸੀਕ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਨਵਾਈਟ ਕੀਤਾ। ਔਰ NDP ਪਾਰਟੀ ਤੋਂ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਨਾਈਜਲ ਲੋਗਨ ਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਨੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਾਫੀ ਦੇਰ ਤੋਂ NDP ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਉਹ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟ ਨੇ ਐਡਮਿੰਟਨ ਮਿਲਵੁੱਡਸ ਤੋਂ। ਔਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਜੋ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟ ਨੇ ਐਡਮਿੰਟਨ ਮਿਲਵੁੱਡਸ ਤੋਂ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਬੈਨ ਹੈਂਡਰਸਨ ਵੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਨੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤਿੰਨਾਂ ਹੀ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਬੜੀ ਹੈਲਥੀ ਡਿਬੇਟ, ਇੱਕ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹੋਵਾਂਗੇ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੇਸੀ ਲਈ ਬੜਾ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਪਾਰਟ ਹੈ ਜੀ। ਐਂਡ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਸਵਾਲ ਹੋਣਗੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਪਾਸੋਂ ਜਾਣਾਂਗੇ। Gentlemen, this is the very important day for democracy. This is International Day of Democracy today, 15th of September, and we are celebrating the best part of democracy, debate. So welcome. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
So format is we'll give you 2 minutes each to tell us about yourself and your campaign or whatever you feel like, and then after that we'll start our questioning period, and we'll start alphabetically. And so with the party, I would say Mr. Timopol, you are the first person we choose, so please tell us about yourself and your party to our audience.
Well, thank you very much, and sat sri akal ji, sat sri akal sare listeners nu. Mainu lagda we just to keep it fair, we fir English ji bol lunga, then I think it will be fair for everybody involved.
Yes.
So thank you. Good morning, and thank you for hosting this very important debate. It's our first opportunity to get together and discuss party issues, party platforms, and what's happening in Canada. I've been the member of parliament here now in Millwoods now for this last term, and it has been a great honor for me to serve the people of Edmonton Millwoods. We have helped so many people here on the ground with our office here locally, with immigration issues, with issues with CRA, with issues with people being stuck outside of the country, as you know, with this pandemic. It's been an interesting year, and one that's been really one that's been very emotional for a lot of people with the different issues that have come up. We've had so many parents stuck, maybe some of them in India, with some of your listeners, Pakistan, other parts of the world. And we've been helping them come back here. That was during the beginning of the pandemic. We had issues where people couldn't get their services, get their benefits, and so we helped them get their CERB, helped the businesses get their wage subsidies and everything. So we've always been available, and we will continue if elected. We'll continue that service to people in Millwoods. In Ottawa, we've been working hard to hold the government to account. We've when all this, the pandemic started, we supported the government in providing $2,000 for CERB. The initial idea for the wage subsidy was only 10%. We worked with the other opposition parties, and that turned out to be a 75% program, which really helped Canadians get back to work, or at least be able to keep some of their jobs once they were able to. So, we will continue to do that, but what we really need now is a plan for the future, and that's what Aaron O'Toole and the Conservative Party really provides, is a plan to secure the future, to bring jobs back, to bring our strong economy back to Alberta, which we really lost in the last several years, not only because of the pandemic, but well before the pandemic. So we're going to be able to bring those investments back to Alberta.
Thank you very much, sir. Now we would like to ask Mr. Ben Henderson, candidate from Liberal Party. Please tell us about yourself.
Thanks very much. This election, Edmonton and Millwoods residents have a very clear choice: move forward for everyone, or take a giant leap backwards by scrapping or cutting programs and services that Edmontonians and Millwood residents, businesses and workers have relied on to get us through this global pandemic. The Liberal Party of Canada's platform will ensure our continued trajectory of economic rejuvenation and growth in the coming months and years. As your representative in Ottawa, I will use my 14 years of experience effectively advocating for Edmonton to give Millwoods residents the strong, experienced Edmonton voice that voters in this riding want, representing them in Ottawa. In recent weeks, I've knocked on thousands of doors of Millwoods families. I'm hearing that be they longtime residents or recent newcomers, they're concerned about affordable and accessible childcare, supports for seniors, affordable housing options, good quality, stable jobs, and climate change. And I'll note that the diversity I love so much about Millwoods is partly a result of liberal immigration policy. I hear that often at the doors. And it's also why my own family is here, because Liberal governments helped make the decision to make Canada a welcoming and inclusive country. The Liberal Party has a real plan to recover from this pandemic and build back better. We have a plan that addresses climate change and builds a strong economy, that will support local and regional economic diversification. And we have a plan that is focused on making life better for Canadians in a way that leaves no one behind. And with your help and support, we'll ensure Millwoods moves forward for everyone. I skimmed the Conservative costed platform, and unfortunately, Mr. Uppal, you have zero money earmarked for transit, including the LRT, zero money for universities, roads, bridges, airports, nothing. Your party says it's going to be there for municipalities. In the end, you have no money committed to it. Our party has been here for Canadian municipalities. We have put the money where our mouths are to help communities. I've spent the last 14 years fighting for Edmonton to get its fair share of federal funds. And when I'm elected as the next MP for Millwoods, I will fight every day for key projects that will benefit this community.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Now I would like to ask Mr. Logan. Mr. Logan, NDP candidate from Edmonton Millwoods. Please introduce yourself and your opening remarks.
Right. Hello, Sat Sri Akal, Assalamu Alaikum, Namaste. I'm Nigel Logan. I'm your NDP candidate here in Edmonton Millwoods. And compared to my two opponents, the only full-time resident of the riding. Personally, I think Millwoods residents deserve a representative that lives here and understands the unique character of our riding. I live in Millwoods with my wife and two sons, just a 10-minute walk from Julia Kiniski School. Experience the same day-to-day issues that everyone else experiences. And I've worked hard to break down barriers and build inclusive communities, because I feel that we can only have a great community when no one is left behind. Not only have I worked with many different ethno-cultural communities and community leagues, I've organized fundraisers, spoke at rallies, and successfully advocated for important changes at all levels of government. I've lived the immigrant experience. I'm not an immigrant myself, but my wife is from India. I've been through the process of applying for casework, waiting for the envelopes to come back, and since the last election, and I do apologize, Mr. Uppal, but since the last election, I've been hearing from people who've been reaching out for me who have not heard from his office, who are not getting results from his office. And this is something I'm committed to. I have federal experience working for another NDP MP, and that's given me the understanding of what it takes to get cases through the system, how to advocate for changes with members of the government, with other opposition parties, real changes that Canadians are looking for. With CERB and the Canada Wage Subsidy, those programs would not have been what they are without Jagmeet Singh in the NDP caucus and forcing the Liberal government to actually act on their promises. A 10% wage subsidy would have saved no jobs. Instead, we pushed it to 75 and saved thousands. It saved small businesses across the country from having to shutter their doors during the COVID pandemic. But we know the Liberal Party just called an election during the middle of our fourth wave, in the middle of a pandemic, and people are worried. We shouldn't. This is an irresponsible election, and I think voters are going to show their interest and show in change. We don't have to do things the Liberal way. We don't have to do things the Conservative way. There is a better path forward. There is a new deal for people. And Jagmeet Singh and the...
Thank you very much. Since both of the candidates mentioned you and you are working, I'll give you 1 minute to answer that. Reason for that is when you spoke about yourself, nothing about other parties, but other parties used to speak about you and your party. So I'm going to give you 1 minute here.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I'm pleased to stand on my record of helping constituents with issues in the riding, my record of supporting them, supporting our organizations. But of course, yes, there are some people that are very disappointed with the immigration system because it's a liberal system right now. The lottery system with parents and grandparents, that's a mess, and so people are very frustrated. They want their families to unite, and the liberal system has been stopping them from doing that in the last number of years. As for funding for infrastructure in the cities, we made those commitments. We've committed to the LRT, and we're committed to helping cities right across the country build up their infrastructure so they can serve their constituents, including for transit as well.
Thank you very much. Now, my co-host Raj will start with the first question. Raj, welcome.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you for taking your time and coming to our studio. And let's add some energy to this room at this time. What would you say about the election call at this time? I'll start with Tim Opal again.
Okay, thank you. I think this election call is nothing more than an opportunistic power grab by Justin Trudeau. This election is not about people. This election is not about the people of Edmonton Millwoods or anyone in Canada. This is about Justin Trudeau. And so, he has basically said as much that he's trying to get a majority. This election is going to cost over $600 million. And very possibly, what the polls show, we're going to have the exact same result. So a complete failure by the Liberal Party on calling this election during the middle of a pandemic where it's going to make things worse, and during an international crisis like Afghanistan where they should have been focused on those issues, but they are only focused on themselves, which is quite usual for Justin Trudeau.
Thank you. And one thing we forgot to mention, only 1 minute for each answer. Now we'll go to Mr. Nigel.
Right. Mr. Uppel is absolutely correct. This is an unnecessary election. I personally don't want this election, and people on the doors, people on the phones that I talk to do not want this election. It is a power grab, and we have we're having a terrible pandemic response from our provincial government, and instead of showing leadership and getting us through this crisis, the NDP caucus committed to working with the Liberal government in the minority situation, and instead he called an election that no other party wanted, just to get a majority, and I think this is wrong, and I think voters are going to show this at the polls.
Thank you so much. And the question goes to Mr. Ben Henderson, please.
I'm more and more struck. There are some really fundamental differences in the vision of how we move forward in this country right now. And that is pivotally important. And I think having an election on that and allowing people to weigh in on that. 2 years ago, we were in a very different country. And I question as well this argument that somehow that Parliament was working. I think it was growing increasingly unstable. We know that governments in minority situations last little over 2 years. Yes, there's self-interest involved. I would go back to 2005 when we had Kyoto on the table and the support from the federal government for that, when we had the Kelowna Accord, which had been worked out with Indigenous peoples, and when we had child care on the table. And the New Democrats sided with the Conservatives to bring that government down. We would have had all those things 15 years ago, and it was exactly the same situation. So arguments about self-interest, if it really is about the things we're trying to move forward on, let's talk about those.
Thank you so much for answering that. And we have our next very important question, and I'll let Gushern handle that.
Our next question is about your party platforms, and we would like to know what that brings for Alberta. The party platform, what do we have special for Alberta and that platform? We'll start with Mr. Henderson.
I think I would argue first and foremost that we were here for Alberta as a government, getting people through the pandemic, and now the focus is on getting people back going and getting the economy going again. On the longer term, I think one of the things that I'm really hearing is that people are deeply concerned about climate change. We've seen what's happened, but I think that's an opportunity for Alberta. And I don't think it's about rolling time back and pretending we can rebuild something that probably is going to pass us by. Yes, oil and gas is going to be here for another few years. It's not going to go away tomorrow. But if we do not invest in what happens next here, if we don't invest in people and help them train in the new economy, the world is going to leave us behind, and we're going to be in big trouble here. And I think that's a really, really fundamental difference in where we think we should be putting our resources right now. It's in the future. It's not in investing in the past.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Nigel?
Well, Mr. Henderson, those are great words, but how can we trust the Liberal Party to actually follow through on anything? I mean, the fact is, the Liberal Party's been promising things like childcare for 30 years. We're falling behind the Paris agreements. You mentioned the 2005 minority parliament, but that ended for the same reason that we're probably seeing an end right now, with Liberal corruption and Liberal mismanagement of...
I will give you a chance to rebuttal, but right now,
Sure.
would your party platform, please?
Sure. So here in Alberta, climate change is obviously an important issue, but we can't leave our oil and gas workers behind. The fact is, the Trudeau government bought a pipeline. I don't think that's great for climate change. In fact, it increases emissions. But regardless, we need to make sure those workers are taken care of. Where are the sustainable jobs? That's 2,000 to 3,000 jobs for a few years, and then it's 15 to 20 to maintain that pipeline after. What is coming next? The NDP plan is we're going to move into renewables, take those transfer skills, pay for workers of all ages to retool and adapt for the new energy economy. It's absolutely necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Rupal?
Here's the thing, that well before the pandemic, Justin Trudeau's Liberals brought in bills like C-69 and C-48 that really hurt our economy here, specifically targeted Alberta. These are bills that billions of dollars of investment left Alberta, and with it, thousands of jobs. We all felt it. Everybody. I mean, when I go door to door, people talk about the fact that since the Liberals have been in, how their hours have even been reduced, or they've lost jobs. So we will work to bring those jobs back. We will cancel C-69 and C-48. Those are bills that are absolutely hurting us, and bring good paying jobs back to Alberta. We still have a strong energy sector. We have an energy sector that should be championed. We will champion it, and because it is world leading environmentally, on issues of human rights, and being able to provide energy and good, strong jobs for this sector. And at the same time, we can still diversify, but you don't have to dump our industry to do that.
Next question, Raj, and we'll address that. Start with Mr. Nigel on that question.
Yes, I think that's going to be fair. Thank you so much. And the question is, what are the challenges of your constituency? What are people's concern in Millwoods?
Well, I mentioned it at the top. With the COVID-19 pandemic, we've really just seen an exposure of the cracks in our healthcare system. I keep hearing from people who are worried about being able to put food on the table, also self-isolating. We have children going back to schools that are unmasked. And frankly, we have not seen much leadership from the Liberal government. Every good thing that Canadians got to get out through this pandemic came as a result of the NDP forcing the Liberals to act. And so here in Millwoods, this is affecting everybody. Mr. Ripple mentioned immigration at the top, and this is the same thing. We have a backlog of cases. We have people waiting for their citizenship for over a year and a half, and this is a result of mismanagement through the pandemic. And finally, these two keep talking about infrastructure in Millwoods, but they're talking about, like, I just saw a Twitter argument the other day where they're arguing about an LRT line that isn't even going to touch our riding. And I feel that if you can't live here and you don't know what's going to affect people and how they're going to get to work and go to school and things like that, really should you be running? I mean, this is fundamental, and I think local representation matters.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson.
Just kind of respond to that LRT line because it puzzles me deeply. I mean, the first LRT that we built in many years, and we should have done it a long time before, is going to open in Millwoods in the next few months. I really don't understand that comment at all. It will be open soon, and I was there to fight for it and make sure it happens. So I'll talk about what I'm hearing now. I hear you.
Thank you.
I'm hearing some seniors that they're concerned about affordability, and we certainly have things in the platform. Affordability is a big issue, and that's everything from childcare, which is why that's so important. And we had childcare on the table. We've been trying to do it for decades. We lost it 15 years ago because we were defeated in Parliament, and then we had 10 years of Conservative government. So that's important. Housing and housing affordability is really important for people. The number of people that are really, really excited about the ability to get into housing, and that's about helping them get their first payment, and also about making sure we have supply. Childcare is huge. childcare is really huge for people and the affordability of childcare. And I would agree on immigration and family reunification in particular is important. And we have worked really hard to clear the backlog that we inherited 6 years ago. And yes, COVID got away in the last few years, but we are not backing off from that. And we're putting a number of things in place to continue to improve the system. And we had cleared off that backlog until COVID hit. And then I would say I'm also hearing concerns about racism and Islamophobia and those kind of issues, which are getting worse and way more serious in Edmonton and across our country, and we have to step up on those issues.
Thank you so much. Mr. Timopol.
I will agree with Mr. Henderson about affordability. I think that has been an issue, but unfortunately, it's under the Liberals that affordability has gotten so much worse. Inflation right now, the numbers came out just today, I believe, and it's 4.1% inflation rate. That's the highest in 20 years. So under Justin Trudeau's plan to continuously print money and it's just spend, we're not getting results. We should be getting results. We should know how many jobs are being created. That's not actually happening. And so when you're spending that much money, everything else, the value of your own dollar goes down. So everything is more expensive. Groceries more expensive. Gas is more expensive. All the prices are going up. They don't even have a plan to address inflation. In fact, Justin Trudeau himself had said that he doesn't think about those things. So we do have a plan. We also want to bring good paying jobs back to Mill Woods. Those are the issues that I'm continuously hearing is affordability and better jobs.
Thank you so much.
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਵੈਰੀ ਮੱਚ ਵੈਲਕਮ ਬੈਕ ਸਾਡੀ ਡਿਬੇਟ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟਸ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਨੇ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਪੋਜ਼ਿਟਿਵ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਡਿਬੇਟ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਬੜਾ ਹੈਲਥੀ ਪਾਰਟ ਹੈ ਜੀ ਇਹ ਡਿਬੇਟ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੇਸੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਜੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੌਕਾ ਦੇਵਾਂਗੇ ਉਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਕੰਟਰਡਿਕਟ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਅਗਰ ਕੋਈ ਸਮਝਦੇ ਨੇ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਅਸਲੀਅਤ ਦੇ ਲਾਗੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਂ ਥੋੜੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਉਹ 'ਚ ਟਵਿਸਟ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਹੁਣ ਐਡਰੈਸ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ ਸੋ ਜੈਂਟਲਮੈਨ ਨਾਓ we enter into the phase where you can rebuttal each other whatever you have said so far and whatever you have mentioned so far. We'll start that with Mr. Nigel. Sir, minute and a half for you. You can address any concern or any question you have about the statements.
Sure. I'd actually like to address a statement that Mr. Henderson talked about. He was talking about childcare and how he blamed that we don't have childcare because of the ancient political history of 16 years ago. Well, the fact is the Liberals had a majority government from 2015 to 2019, and they could have done it then. Why are they only acting now, right before an election campaign? I feel like I don't know if there's something, they're trying to distract the public from something, if some scandal's coming out, perhaps with Jody Wilson-Raybould's book that just came out. But we have an issue where people are needing childcare, and we do need a better system. Our system is about $10 a day. It's not about putting it out 5 years from now where we have a limited number of spaces. It's going to be universal and affect everybody, just like the GiveX system. And to the folks who stay at home and watch their kids through intergenerational households, we have a plan to help those people as well, because childcare takes all forms, and we need to be accommodating of that to accommodate different ethnocultural differences in how people raise their children.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Henderson.
Maybe just to respond to that really quickly. I mean, I think this is a comprehensive childcare program. I'm not sure enough people understand that it's not just about the $10 a day. It's about making sure that there is childcare for people, because accessibility of childcare has been a huge problem. It's about making sure it's for everybody. It's about making sure it's there for shift workers. It's about making sure it's there for people that may have work at different hours. It's also about after childcare. All of that has to be built up. It's not going to happen overnight, but we need to make it happen. We've been waiting way too long for that. So it's also about making sure people are properly paid for childcare. It's about making sure that we have high quality childcare, because we know what a huge difference that makes for the rest of the lives of those kids. And all of that helps people get back to work. So, I make no apologies for our childcare thing. We're online. We've signed a deal with most provinces. And we will have it. And if we lose it again, that will be criminal. I make no apologies for my track record here in Mill Woods. I have spent 14 years working on behalf, our oath at the city is to serve the whole community, which is why there's a lot of things in this community that have my name on them. The 50th Street overpass that we're finally getting to get over that train that has been such a nightmare for people being able to commute. 2 libraries, both of which I was on the library board when they happened. The senior center that's above the library that I fought very hard to keep. The flooding problems that we had in Millwoods, those are all things that I worked on to make sure they were here for this community. So, and I would challenge Mr. Logan back to go, what does he have in his record that shows you can actually make things happen for Millwoods? And then finally, on the infrastructure piece, re-announcing things that have already been committed to by this government and claiming that somehow that's something new. The LRT's done. It's, that money's in place. So to Mr. Uppal, taking credit for something, saying we're not going to take the money back again, I don't think is a major commitment to the new things we need in this community, in this riding, and in this city.
Thank you very much. Mr. Uppal?
Yeah, thank you. No, it's just because, Mr. Henderson, you had said that we're going to cancel things, and I made it clear that, no, we are committed to that different structure. You know what? I mean, childcare is absolutely very important, and we have a flexible plan. In fact, the Alberta government asked for a flexible plan from Justin Trudeau, but what he did is he gave the exact same flexible plan to to Quebec, but said no to Alberta. And that's part of the problem with this government, is that they do a lot of things for show, and obviously playing favoritism with other provinces. Listen, childcare is important, but it's also important to have senior care as well. And so we have a plan that if you have seniors in the house, if you have taking care of seniors in the home, that we would actually pay you to help you to do that. So that's another part of this, because in Millwoods we have so many multi-generational families. I've lived with my grandmother in our home, and so that's important. As for supporting people in Millwoods, Mr. Henderson, you voted against taxi drivers. You voted.
That's not true.
That
is not true.
You absolutely did. You voted in favor.
I'm really tired of these lies being told, because I would like to see the facts on that. I'm sorry, it is just not true.
Your vote is on the record.
My vote is on the record that I voted against Uber. That's what's on the record.
You voted against the taxi drivers.
I did not. That is complete
well,
untruth.
we can definitely investigate that. We can go for 4, but I don't think enough time is left for that. Thank you very much, Mr. Uppal. The next question, now it's going to be a little more personal about your candidacy and all that. Mr. Uppal, I'm going to start with you. My first question is, we heard the direct concern from our riding residents, like Millwoods residents, that sometime your availability is the concern. You are not available in the riding. What do you have to say about that?
Sure. I mean, here's the thing. All members of Parliament, when Parliament is sitting, go to Ottawa, usually about 5 days a week, especially if you're in a leadership role. I'm a leadership with the Conservative, with our party, and in the past have been a minister. So that's when Parliament sits. So Monday to Friday, or Thursday night or Friday, we're in Ottawa. When Parliament's not sitting, I do come back. I have a residence here. But yes, my children go to school. I have a special needs child, and they go to school in Ottawa. This is a way for me to be able to spend time be in Ottawa when all MPs are in Ottawa, but also spend time with family. And I do come back probably almost as much as all the other MPs, come back to the riding and try to be here with them as well. And I do not apologize for putting my family in line with my job. I'm very much committed to the people of Edmonton Millwoods. I'm committed to helping them, but I also need to spend, as many other MPs do. There are other MPs with the same situation. And I will say, David Kilgore was the MP here for 26 years. He had the exact same schedule, exact same setup where his kids went to school in Ottawa. It's the same plan.
Thank you very much. Now, next question is for Mr. Henderson. Raj would ask that.
And this question is for you, Mr. Henderson. What is happening? There are lots of hardworking people who work and they're committed with the Liberal Party. But what's happening recently, Liberal Party is bypassing the system and bringing the candidates forward. So what is your say about that? There was no...
There's no nomination. Yeah, no the acclamation.
Yeah.
Calgary, Edmonton, last few. It says a recent trend. Whenever there is a chance that a Liberal can win this seat, they always bring in the acclamation instead of bringing the grassroots
And
candidate.
especially in your case too, and once before, right, in the same constituency.
I would happily have had a nomination fight. There was no one that ran against me. I was asked to do this. I was asked to do this by people in the community, and I thought about it long and hard. It was not necessarily a quick and easy decision. But I thought it was a way that I could serve the city and continue to serve the city and continue the work that I've been doing. And that's why I stepped forward. And if somebody had run against me, I would happily have run against them for the nomination. That didn't happen.
Okay.
There was no one that was stepping forward, and that's part of why I was asked.
So it was announced. The follow-up question is, was there a nomination announced for the Millwoods and nobody showed up, or it was never?
The nomination had been open, and no candidates came forward besides myself.
Okay.
And at that point, I was acclaimed. If somebody had come forward, there would have been a competition.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Mr. Nigel, we have a next question is for you. Your party leader, Mr. Jagmeet Singh, openly stated many times that he's against gas and oil and gas. Being a Albertan, what is your stand on that, and how do you see that statement coming out from your leadership?
Well, I think that's a misconception because he's not against oil and gas. What he's against is oil and gas subsidies that artificially keep an industry afloat that is frankly dying. To a layman person that's against the oil and gas industry, standing against the oil and gas industry. I understand, but the fact is, I mentioned earlier on the Trans Mountain, you can get 2,000 to 3,000 jobs, but where are the sustainable jobs? I have 2 family members working on that pipeline, and what happens after? It's contract work. It's precarious. You have to fight for the next contract, and there's no labor protections. So our plan is built around addressing those concerns. We need, a sustainable job means a job that you can have year round, not, you show up one day and then you're the province away and you're skidded. So we want to get away from that problem, and frankly, again, like I said, the oil industry is shrinking. We can't rely on exporting everything to India and China because those countries are rapidly divesting from petroleum. We got to work on something locally that's going to promote local jobs and help Albertans locally.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much for answering that question. And another question for Mr. Henderson. Thank you so much. And the question is, Albertans feel that the federal Liberal is not connected with Albertans. Nobody visited in their tenure. So now, before the election, the leadership is visiting everywhere. What would you say about that?
I've had a number of people from leadership that have come and visited during this campaign, and I can tell you from, I think this is a bit of a myth that they're ignoring us. I think, quite frankly, we didn't give somebody from here to make sure that our voice is regularly in Ottawa, but they have bent over backwards to work with us. And I know that from my time on City Council. I know how much focus there's been on trying to be here for this city. But it's really hard when we don't have a voice from here in government. And that's what they're begging us to give them, is a voice that's at the table that can take the knowledge about this city, the knowledge about this community, the knowledge about this riding, and make sure it's there when the decisions are being made. And we took that off the table. We took it away, but I can tell you, the work that the government has done, even in the last 2 years from us on City Council, has really tried to respond to the things that we've been saying to them about what we need in this community. They've been there for us on affordable housing in a way that no federal government had ever been there for us before. There's all sorts of things that they've really, in response to what they're hearing from us, have really tried to work with us on. So the argument that somehow they're ignoring us is just not true. I mean, you can say it as often as you want. I've been there. I've been at the table. I know it's not true.
Usually, sir, definition of democracy is whatever democratic outcome is, people should live with that. If Alberta choose not to, not to have any Liberal candidate from Alberta, any Liberal MP from Alberta, its government should make efforts to address that issue and serve that community, even if there is no membership.
And I would tell you, I know from my time on City Council that they have been doing everything they can to do that, and there's the evidence of that to show for it. Our problem is, if we don't have someone there who actually understands the city when decisions are being made, it's that much harder.
Mr. Henderson, we do have someone there. Miss Heather McPherson in Edmonton Strathcona is the only non-Conservative MP in this province, and she fought to stop coal mines. She's been winning concessions from the Liberal government, while our Conservative colleagues, frankly, sit back and let Jason Kenney do his thing. So I think it requires a new Democrat MP.
We'll again have rebuttal time, sir, for each other. And next question is for you, Mr. Timopal. the raiding, people from the raiding would like you to ask you is, there's many years the federal government was a conservative government and provincial government on the same time was a conservative government as well. Why there was not enough discussion or enough being done for the pipeline, the connectivity of our resources with the shores, and if anything being done, please let us know. So that is the main concern why it was not addressed in 10 years when Mr. Harper was Prime Minister, and you are also part of that government as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. You know what? It wasn't our government that rejected any of those pipelines. It wasn't. The application process was in place. We had supported that application process. We had actually approved some private sector pipeline applications as well. The fact is that under a conservative government, the private sector wanted to invest in Alberta. The private sector wanted to bring more jobs here. They wanted to invest in our energy sector. And under a Liberal government, the private sector walked away, and the Liberals had to ended up buying the pipeline themselves. And so that is the difference, is having an environment where investors and job creators want to invest, that they want to create jobs and help the energy sector, and because those that are investing in the energy sector, they want to put in money, and they want to get money and to be able to make money, and that also creates jobs. And under a conservative government, that did happen, and it will continue to happen. And that's why I'm saying it's very important that we need a commitment to cancel C-69. That legislation that Justin Trudeau brought in well before the pandemic is something that has hurt jobs. It's thousands of jobs have left Alberta because of Justin Trudeau's actions.
Thank you very much. The next question is, there's a major issue what being happen in the schools, the boarding schools and regional schools. Unfortunately, so many graves were found, and communities are shattered with that. What are your platform or your party standing to reconcile with the indigenous communities? I would start with Mr. Nigel.
Thank you for this question. It's a very important one as Canada sort of addresses the truth of its past. On a personal basis, I actually learned at the Coesis residential school, where 751 unmarked graves were found, that I had ancestors go through that school. And the shame of it and the way the government cut off language and culture, I think as anybody, regardless of where they come from, can understand that pressure when a government attacks you for who you are. So on reconciliation, I'm very sorry to say this, but the Liberals keep taking Indigenous children to court. They're not getting clean water to reserves and needy communities. How is it that a country as wealthy as Canada cannot afford clean drinking water? This is it's bizarre to me. And yet, so what Jagmeet Singh and the NDP caucus have been talking about, this is a major plank of our platform. It has to be an Indigenous-led process. We have 94 calls to reconciliation from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and only about 7 of them have been addressed under a Liberal government. We're going to do better, and we're going to start on that right away.
Thank you. Mr. Nigel? Mr. Henderson?
I don't know where the 7 number comes from. 80% of the recommendations have been achieved already, which doesn't mean we give up on the other 20. We need to keep on going on it. The boil water thing is absolutely a serious problem. We have dealt with 109 of those cases and are trying to stop other ones from getting out of hand. We need to keep on going on that. We cannot pull back on it. Progress is to be made. Is it enough yet? No, I don't think anybody would claim it was. And I would also say, from my experience, and I think this is also what we see at the federal level, that we need to work with communities. We need to rebuild trust in communities. Trust has been broken over 200 years. And I know from the work that I did at the city with Poverty Edmonton and things like that the Indigenous community was not going to come back to the table with us because they didn't trust us anymore. And we had to rebuild that trust and let them know that we were going to work with them, that we were going to support what they needed, that we were going to give them the autonomy that they needed to be able to address what was happening. So are we going to fix this problem overnight? No, we've created a 200-year problem, and it's going to take time to address it, and we have to stay vigilant, we have to stay diligent, and we have to continue to work with Indigenous communities to make sure that they that we can undo the damage of the last 2 centuries.
Thank you. Mr. Upal?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of this is that to have Indigenous communities as genuine partners in an economic sense as well, and so we have made a commitment that we would work with them, and when there are new projects coming up, to ensure that they're also involved in that and have even to the point of having equity in those projects as well. I've met with a number of Indigenous community leaders, especially those in the business sector, that would definitely favor a plan like that. And again, what happens here is that when Justin Trudeau and the Liberals have hurt our energy sector, especially here in Alberta, that not only hurts, it hurts jobs across the board, including Indigenous jobs. Those are good, great paying jobs that members of the Indigenous community would be very happy to be a part of those projects. And unfortunately, their decisions hurts everyone.
Thank you very much.
My Radio 580 AM ਤੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣ ਰਹੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਤੇ ਡਿਬੇਟ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਸਾਰੇ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟਸ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ 'ਚ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਵਕਤ, ਤਿੰਨੇ ਜੋ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟਸ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਮਿਲਵਰਡਸ ਕਨਸਟੀਟੂਐਂਸੀ ਤੋਂ, ਤੇ ਕਮਰਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹੁਣੇ ਸੁਣੀ, ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਚੱਲਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਵੱਖਰੀਆਂ। I have a question for all three of you. I will take Mr. Henderson first of all on this. People are seeing this and their concern is big time. This campaign has so much negativity. Instead of working on their party platform, they are pulling the legs of the other parties' leaders and candidates. Why so?
I think, and I much prefer, quite frankly, to be talking about what we're putting forward. But I do think that there are some real distinctions between our campaigns, and I think there's only one way to make that clear. I think we have to show people that there's real choice here. I think we have to show people that they're not the same. That in actual fact, we're pushing forward some very different visions for what Canada needs to be in the future, from what Alberta needs to be in the future, for what Edmonton needs to be in the future, and what Millwoods needs to be in the future. And sometimes you can only do that by comparing. And otherwise, it all just begins to blend together. And it's very easy to sound like you're saying the same thing, when in actual fact, I think there are real differences. And I think to have an election, we have to make sure that those differences are clear.
Thank you so much. Mr. Nigel Logan.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I mean, we're in an election, and for better or for worse, we have to make a contrast with our opponents, because we have very different visions for Canada. And there's the usual politicking of, this party doesn't believe this, or we believe that, and we're the only ones who can trust. I mean, that's for voters to make up their minds, but the fact is, the job is communication. The job is ideas, and the job is conveying those ideas from your local constituency here in Edmonton Millwoods to Ottawa. The job is taking concerns of people locally to Ottawa and fixing problems with government that they're experiencing. And we all, I think we would all agree, we all have different approaches on how we would do that. I've mentioned before, I live here. I've done the casework. I know when sometimes the boss needs to get involved, and sometimes the staffer can't do all the work. So I mean, I'm doing it right now, right? So, but these are important issues to identify, and I think voters need to make that ultimate choice.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tim Opal.
Yeah, I think this, you're seeing so much negativity, especially from the Liberals, because they called this pandemic election without really a plan. I mean, their platform didn't come out, so they didn't even talk about themselves, about what their plan was till I think last week, or well into the election. We released a platform on day one, and so we have our ideas out there, and we're talking about it. Even just on issues so important as vaccines, the Liberals have been the ones that have been really dividing Canadians and pushing, instead of solutions and working with Canadians, about really saying about them versus us, and that's an actual quote from Justin Trudeau. And so they've gone with this very negative positioning because they have no ideas for they called it a pandemic election mostly as a power grab, and it would be much better if we talked about ideas.
Definitely, thank you. And next question is, I can see all three parties are taking credit for all the freebies and all the help Canadian got in the pandemic. Now we're going to discuss the debt, and it's the biggest debt accumulation in the probably history of Canada. And what are your party platform or your personal take on that, on how we can get rid of the debt what we have accumulated so far? Mr. Upal.
Okay, good. You're right, and I don't actually take credit for all the spending. We helped. I'm very pleased that we were able to help Canadians when they needed it most. Use legislation that takes 2 or 3 weeks to pass. We stayed with all the other parties, and I think we did it overnight. And so I will take credit for that, to be a part of that. But this accumulating debt, and our the debt deficit and the debt, which the debt has I think it's topped over $1 trillion now, has real consequences. All of the spending has real consequences. Inflation has gone up. Everything that you're trying to purchase, your groceries, your gas, and other products, housing has gone up because of the money that you have is actually worth less when you continue to print money so much, essentially print money in that way. And so we do have a plan to get that under control. We have said that without cutting services, by growing the economy, that we would manage to balance the budget in 10 years. We're not saying tomorrow, because that would not be good, that we will do it in 10 years so we can provide the services that Canadians need, the Canadians rely on. We will continue to support Canadians that are suffering from the pandemic, and we will balance the budget in 10 years. Here in Canada, you should not lose money by working. That's essentially what's happening here, is that many people are not working because of, there's businesses, restaurants and hotel industry and others, construction industry, who are saying, we want to hire employees. Mm-hmm. They can't find employees, and yet our unemployment rate is so high. There's a problem there, and we have to address that. So we would bring in programs to allow Canadians to work, to support them, but also, to make sure that they don't lose any money, and we would help employers as well. So targeted spending is essentially what's needed, so smarter spending.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson.
Yeah, I think we need to be really careful about this one when we talk about inflation and we talk about debt. I don't think anybody's arguing we can keep on spending at the rate we did last year. We had to do that to get people through this pandemic. We would have had people out on the street. We would have had people starving if we hadn't done that. But I also think that if we go into a period now of austerity, we could do serious long-term damage to our economy. That the main way we deal with the debt is getting the economy going again and dealing with that ratio of debt to our gross domestic product. What's happening in inflation right now, I think, is far more a cause of what's happening internationally with global supply chains that are still broken and need to be rebuilt. And it's not a solely Canadian problem. It's happening everywhere. That's got to get fixed. And if we respond in the wrong way now to that, we could do serious damage. And I would just say, if there were real concerns about inflation at this point, you would see the Bank of Canada making a very different choice, because they're the ones that control the monetary policy. You would see them raising interest rates to try and slow our economy down. That's not what's happening right now, because that's not what we can afford. If we start doing that, we're going to have serious problems for years to come with our economy. So yes, do we have to slow down on spending from what we did last year? I think everybody would argue we need to do that. But if we go into a serious austerity mode right now and really start cutting things back, I think we're going to be in big trouble for many, many, many years to come, and that's not what I would support.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nigel Logan. Yes, I'm always mixing your last name with your
Logan,
first name. I'm sorry.
It's popular first name now. The population co-opted. Debt and economics. This is a complex thing, and I don't want to start talking about debt to income ratios and stuff, but these are important. Mr. Henderson, right. If we go to a period of austerity, we'll kill any recovery that we have. We've seen this time and time again. We saw this after the 2008 crisis as well. But there's a problem here because, the Conservatives, they always talk about cuts, and, the government paid out something like $80 billion for CERB and kind of wage subsidy and things like that. But the Liberal government went and printed another $600 billion and gave it to the banks, and that's what's driving inflation right now. Those are loans that are going out and driving up house prices. That's causing affordability issues. It's making it more difficult for people to get into homes, and not just in Toronto and Vancouver, right here in Edmonton as well. Mm-hmm. And so our plan, we want to get people into their own home, but when we're talking about lowering the Bank of Canada rates or raising them to curb inflation. Well, the problem is the Liberals are stuck. Their policy has put us in a hard place, because as soon as they raise the interest rate, thousands of people will lose their homes. And so there's a delicate balancing act here that's not going to happen with printing more money. What we need is investments into programs. These programs, by and large, we get a return on it, whether that's pharmacare or dental care or increased payments to healthcare, or even student loans, helping students out. These are net benefits to our economy. And what would you rather have, the government take on debt or you personally take on debt?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for answering all those hard questions. I have another one. I know I heard inflation a lot in this conversation, and printing money, I heard that too. The question is, housing crisis is big in Canada. Everybody's concerned about it. Millennials are lost in this. What is the government doing, including the inflation, which is 4.1%, highest since 2003? So I have those two questions in one. So I'll start with Mr. Nigel Logan, please. What would you say about that?
Sure. I just addressed briefly about affordable housing. I mean, this is where we're seeing it. We have foreign investors from overseas investing in blind corporations, so there's no trace of ownership, pumping millions of dollars into housing markets and raising rates. So on the affordable housing issue, it's not just about printing less money or what have you. It's also about addressing the money laundering issues that have been endemic under Conservative and Liberal governments. The BC provincial government has been uncovered a lot of cases of high-level corruption relating to money laundering, and it's fanning the flames of their red-hot real estate market. And that problem is coming here. Here in Edmonton, I keep hearing, 25% of Millwood's units are rental units. How is it that a rental unit, where you get no benefit of ownership, costs as much as a mortgage payment? I think something's wrong there. And it does affect everybody, because I was talking to my neighbor who's a lifelong Conservative, and he tells me he's worried that about his children who are now married, they're starting their own families. How do they get into a home? Now they have to move out of Mill Woods. People are leaving Edmonton and people are leaving Alberta because of this issue, and we have a plan. We're going to help people get into their own homes. We're going to address some of the rental concerns, and over the long term, we're going to lower the price of houses, because we need to get people want to own their own homes. I want to own my own home.
Thank you so much. And how your party is going to lower the prices of the houses?
Right. So I just mentioned that. So it's, we can't just be printing $600 billion and giving it to banks, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's this idea that based on the way money and the dollar is created, I won't get into all the economic theory stuff, but the fact is it causes problems when you hand money to banks and then they only bet their money on mortgages for the most profitable people. Well, what about all the other people that need a place to live? We have an opioid crisis right now, and I strongly believe in the principle of housing first. If you don't have a place to live, how can you get the help you need? Where do you get the money to recover? All of that stuff.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ben Henderson.
Yeah, I think some would echo some of the things that Nigel's saying, but in particular, I think we need to understand that this is both about making it easier for people to get, particularly first-time home buyers, to get into and get their down payment together. That's why the tax-free savings account that is both works like an RSP and a tax-free savings account will allow people to put $40,000 aside without paying tax on the money on the way in or the tax on the money on the way out. And that, tied with some other programs, makes a $30,000 difference to people getting their first-time home. We also are proposing programs about rent-to-own that allow people another way into the market to be able to transfer that rental program into owning for the first time. I think we need to be careful, though, because if we only deal with increasing people's ability to buy a first-time home, we may further inflate the market. And that's why dealing with the supply side is so critical, and actually getting more housing built. And there's significant commitments being made to actually increase the amount of housing that's being built in this country. Because if you only deal with one side of the equation, you could make the problem worse. And then also, particularly in the rental market, there's a lot of these big investment companies that are now cornering the market and therefore controlling the rents, and we are committed to stepping in and stopping that practice. It includes also stepping in and stopping people from flipping houses quickly, which is not helping the market at all, and as well echoing the concerns that Mr. Logan said around dealing with foreign ownership and the ways that that's can escalate our market. And then third, we need better regulation. We need protection for first-time buyers, for people dealing with realtors, and that's the third pillar of what we're talking about in terms of making housing more affordable. And I would also say none of that talks as well about the significant commitment that I also completely support towards social housing, towards affordable housing, towards permanent supportive housing that our homeless populations need, that the populations in our city need, particularly in this city need, in order to get housing to begin with and get them off the streets.
Thank you so much, Mr. Timopol.
Thank you. Well, the fact is that in the last 6 years, housing has become more expensive. It's become much harder for, especially for first-time home buyers to get into a home. And so, although the Liberals have a plan, it's time that maybe they take action on it. So then, to actually get things done, we do have a plan. I think a big part of this is supply, and so we would work with municipalities and work with the private sector to get more housing built, which will help the overall. The number of houses, if they have more houses, the overall cost would be lower. But also, I think, that's going to create jobs as well. And so we want to be able to help create good paying jobs in the construction sector. The other part of it is foreign buyers. And there's continuously a problem with foreign buyers that do not actually live in the homes, but they're buying some. Some of it is linked to money laundering. So I think that is something that has to be addressed. But if there's legitimate foreign investment in housing, then it should go into affordable rental housing, and so we would help to direct that as well. Mortgages as well. I think there's got to be an opportunity here to allow Canadians to have longer term mortgages, so then the payments themselves are lower, and then they don't have to deal with the stress test. Also, the stress test right now applies if you're with your current mortgage and you try to switch with a bank. The stress test applies, but if you stay with the same bank, it doesn't apply. So that it hurts. There's no competition. So you want the banks to be able to work for your business, to fight for your business, and that'll help to lower rates as well. So there are these ways that we could, change the current system to help Canadians save money.
Last question, sir. That is about the immigration. It's Edmonton Millwoods. We have to discuss immigration. Right now, immigration is not a social issue anymore. It is directly attached with the inflation and our economic policy and the way of growth and way to address that in future. I would like to ask each one of you where your party stand on the immigration policy moving forward if you are elected as a government of Canada. Mr. Logan.
Absolutely. This is an important question, and just off the top, I'd like to pre-address my Conservative opponent, because he's talked before about how he's going to fix the parent-grandparent sponsorship program, and the Conservatives have the...
You're going to give that time to everybody, sir.
Right, and well, no, it's important because right now, every February, we have a draw, or we have a first-come, first-serve, and so the draw is unfortunate, is for parent-grandparent sponsorship is unfair, because you might have applied 10 months ago and your friend gets it, who just applied a month ago. Or, and then when it's first come, first served, like what the Liberal government recently changed it, it's the queue is filled up in 9 minutes. How is that fair? Because now you're paying thousands of dollars to an immigration consultant that can sit there on the computer as soon as the queue opens up. The NDP has always been focused about family reunification. And I think especially important here in Millwoods, when we talk about, the system is currently about parents and grandparents. Well, I know the extended families that many people live in. How do you bring your brother? How do you bring your cousin? Many people are starting businesses so they can employ their family member just so they can bring them to Canada. But there has to be a more direct way to do that. And that's what we're working on. I've worked with immigration. I've done the casework in a member of Parliament's office. I know some of the pitfalls. There's some very legitimate people that get rejected for, frankly, arbitrary reasons. And that's going to be a priority if I'm elected as a member of Parliament. I think this is a very important issue to...
Thank you very much. Mr. Rupal?
Yeah, thank you. Immigration is something that we absolutely need for Canada. Our own population as Canadians will not continue to support the economy if we don't have immigration. So it's vital to our economy. It's vital to just who we are as Canadians. And so that itself is very, very important. And so we need to continue that. We as a party believe very strongly in family reunification, whether that's the parents and grandparents program, streamlining and fixing the the spousal sponsorship that's taking. There's a backlog there as well, and so that needs to be addressed. We believe that Canadians have a responsibility to help around the world with refugees, and also students. There was a great student program, but with all of this, we also need to make sure that there's accountability as well. That to make sure that we're addressing fraudulent issues, we're addressing issues where people are taking advantage of the system, and so we would work to fix those issues as well, while we continue to have a strong, robust immigration system that addresses Canada's needs. So if we have jobs to fill in Canada, then we should have people that, and we can't fill them with Canadians, then we should have people that come in as immigrants that can take up those jobs. The worst thing is bringing in immigrants, making these huge announcements, and then not even having jobs for them for them to be able to take care of their families. It doesn't help Canada, but it also doesn't help those immigrants as well. So we need to have a system that actually is a balanced system.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Henderson.
I think in many ways we're all saying the same thing on this one. I think family reunification is really important. We worked very hard to clean out the system. We inherited a huge backlog, and yes, in COVID it's become more complicated for reasons that I think were about travel as much as anything else. There are some things we want to bring in to make that easier, in terms of being able to apply online, in terms of being able to look at temporary visas that can bridge the period before you can actually get the formal application through. We want to make it easier for people to transfer into permanent residency if they're already here on temporary residency, and also to allow students to transfer more into permanent residency. These are all things I think that we need to do for all the reasons that have been stated. And I had this experience with my own mother, trying to get her back into this country, and I know just how much of a struggle that was in terms of reunification. It took us 2 or 3 years, and when she's that kind of age, when your parents are that kind of age, 2 or 3 years is deeply meaningful. And I think also we have extended what our definition of family is to back up to 22, so that we can allow some of those younger folk to come in under family reunification. There is more work to be done, and I also completely agree that if we have labor shortages in this country, we need immigration is the answer to that, and we need to make it possible to bring the people that will continue to help us build this country here. And as an immigrant myself, I feel really, really strongly about that. If that opportunity had not been made available to me some 50 years ago, my life story would have been very different. And,
thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And we still have many questions left. And we'll give you no time to rebuttal each other on any comments or any promises or any discussion. And in the closing statement, I can give you a little extra time. And if you can address Bill 21, Stand From Your Party, Environment, and opiate crisis, 3 of those into your closing statements. But right now, we'll give you a chance to rebuttal each other comments. Yes, Mr. Nigel, I saw your hand goes up a few times, and I'll give you the first chance, sir.
Sure. Yeah, so the Bill 21 issue is a very important one here, because it's fundamental in our society that everyone has freedom to practice their religion, freedom to wear religious symbols as they want. And when you have a government that's against that, it's frankly a racist bill, and but this kind of foments some problems here in this society, because just recently the Singh Sabha Gurdwara has been defaced. People are attacking Sikhs because they think they're Muslim. Places of worship throughout the riding are taking advantage of grants from the government to install cameras and gates, and to me, this is not the Canada I want to live in. We in Millwoods, we by and large live very peacefully with each other, and so we need to address this Islamophobia issue. I've been in communication with the National Council of Canadian Muslims and the World Sikh Organization, and there's some great initiatives that they're working on to address some of this, and as a government, we would be committed to taking these forward, because you can't impose these things top down. It's a bottom-up discussion, and I can't tell you how you feel about it. On the opioid crisis, this is affecting all communities. I've heard from many community leaders in the last couple of years frankly, it's affecting the Punjabi community quite strongly, but it's kind of hidden. And a lot of our healthcare system and techniques for dealing with the traditional opioid crisis, as we see it, it doesn't address some of the cultural issues. And so we need a multi-pronged approach that addresses the cultural side as much as the physical side and the after effects of that. And so when we might have families that prevent their family member from being made homeless or something like that, but we still need to help those families through that crisis.
Thank you very much. Mr. Opal?
Yeah, thank you. On Bill 21, I mean, for me personally, obviously this is a situation where my children go to a French immersion school, so they will be fully bilingual. And yet, still, because of the way they look and their faith, they will not be able to, work in a job of their choice in a province in our country. And I think that's absolutely unacceptable as Canadians. It's hard to accept that. And I'm pleased that Aaron O'Toole, our leader, has come out and said that this is something that we would never bring forward in a federal situation. Aaron O'Toole is somebody, even in his military background, he has served with Sikhs with turbans and people of all different religions and cultures, and so he respects that, and I appreciate that. I do, at the same time, I understand that this is an issue in Quebec that I think is probably will not be dealt with best if it's the federal government that kind of hammers down on Quebec. It's not going to change minds. I think we need to be able to change minds there, so it's disappointing to say the least. As for the opioid crisis, I think this is something that we definitely need to look at as a health crisis and a mental health crisis as part of it as well. And so that's part of our platform, is to invest more in mental health, invest in addressing the opioid crisis. I like what Mr. Nigel Logan has said, is that we also need to address different cultural issues as well, to understand that in different cultures, it may have to be treated differently. And so there needs to be investment in that, in more investment in treatment centers. I think that's very, very important. You also asked that, address the environment. I think it's absolutely important that we do address climate change. I think it's a serious issue. But the unfortunate thing is that whenever the Liberals do address climate change, it hurts us here in Alberta. And Alberta should not be take on all the burden of climate change for Canada. I think we look at this in a global sense, that we look at this as a global problem. I think here in Alberta, we have industry that has done a great deal to reduce their footprint, that has continued to be world-leading energy industry. I think we can work with them more to even export their technology to other parts of the world. If other countries, China, India, Brazil, Mexico, worked at the same standards that we do, our environmental standards, we would actually bring emissions lower around the world. So let's not just continuously beat up on our own workers that we have here. And also, obviously we have a much better human rights record as well on those issues. So, I think those are the issues that you asked us to address.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henderson.
On those three issues, absolutely on Bill 21, I mean, we had a motion in front of council where we condemned it. I don't know how much difference that makes, quite frankly, but I think we need to keep on standing up strongly and saying these things are wrong. I think, for whatever reasons Quebec is doing it, I think they send subtle coded messages that are part of why we are losing this fight right now around Islamophobia and around racism, and that worries me deeply. And I would say, and I understand Mr. Apple's made apologies for this about barbaric practices hotlines and the Niqab ban before. I get it, but I also am puzzled why there's nothing about Islamophobia and nothing about racism in their current platform. If we're really going to say this is wrong, we have to stand up and say this is wrong. I'm worried. I'm worried that we are going the wrong direction, and I think I worry about that coded message that sits underneath this that gives permission to the very problems that we're having right now. On the opiate conflict, I am a firm believer in harm reduction, in safe injection sites, and actually doing the things that make a difference. We have to understand that these are addictions, and we need to help people in whatever way we can, and if we get ideological about what kind of supports we give them, we're not going to be able to solve the crisis. And my record on City Council, I think, is pretty clear on that as well. And then on the environment, we need to step up. We can't wait any longer on this. We've lost way too much time on this already. I think my own personal record, I have been working really hard with Ottawa for the past 6 years. I've been chairing the Green Municipal Fund, which is a federally funded program, which the Liberals tripled in the time I was there, which is $1.5 billion that we can move out the door to help municipalities deal with this. I don't think we need, if there's anything about the environmental crisis right now, is we need all of the above. There is no magic one solution. We're going to need all the tools that we have, or we're going to be in big trouble. And we'll see more of the things like we've seen this year around the heats and the forest fires. We're running out of time on this, and we need every tool in the toolbox we have in order to step up and make it happen. And I think, I struggle with this idea that Liberals haven't done so, because there's a long list of things we've already achieved, and we need to keep on going on that.
Thank you, gentlemen. My studio watch is almost there, but we have committed to you that we'll let you go from here at 10:30. If you still feel like taking 1 minute each to sum up, we'll give you 1 minute each, and we can start with Mr. Logan.
Absolutely. Friends, listeners, New Democrats are different. I'm a working person. I'm not a career politician. I'm not in this to be a career politician. For our whole history, we've fought for better working conditions and standards that lift everyone up. And we know that good jobs treat people fairly, and make a real difference to Canadian families, and that setting Canadians up for success in the work world of the future benefits us all. And new ways of thinking can shape the recovery from the COVID-19 crisis, help our economy, make our economy fair, and deliver the results we all want. But what we see is a Liberal and a Conservative government that Liberals and Conservatives arguing yet again about who's worse. There is a path forward that you can do better, and if you elect me on September 20th, I'll fight with all my strength to do that for you. Thank you.
And now I would like to ask Mr. Opal, 1 minute closing remarks, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the radio station for hosting this. It's a great opportunity for us to discuss these ideas and issues. I will say thank you to your listeners. ਪਿਛਲੇ ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹੇ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਮੌਕਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ, ਤੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਐਕਟੀ ਫੇਰ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਉਸੇ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਫੇਰ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਦੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਕੋਈ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਹੋਵੇ ਜਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਲੈਵਲ ਇਸ਼ੂਜ਼ ਹੋਣ, ਸਾਡੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਫਿਸ ਨਾਲ ਕਨੈਕਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ, ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਲੀ ਵੀ ਕੰਟੈਕਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਜਿੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਪਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਅਵੇਲੇਬਲ ਹੋਊਂਗਾ। And moving forward, we have a plan to get the economy back on track. We have a plan to work on issues of healthcare, to increase health transfers. We want to make sure we do that. Accountability as well. I mean, we've seen so many scandals under this Liberal government, and there really hasn't been any consequences for that. So we need to change the laws to stop the Liberal scandals. We need to secure Canada in the sense of having more manufacturing and better jobs here, and also manage the budget. We're record levels of deficits and debt, and so over the long term, with continuing to keep core services, we need to keep those services, but we also need to increase revenue and manage our budget. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Henderson.
Just very quickly, I wanted to thank you for doing this, and I actually want to thank both of my opponents for a spirited and a very interesting debate. So thank you. This is what democracy is all about. And just, in closing, I'm fighting for credible solutions to the issues in Millwoods that residents tell me they are concerned about at the doors. I'm fighting to assure everyone has a place to call home, that families in Millwoods get a $10 a day childcare in Edmonton, that we're building a prosperous economy by investing in communities, families, seniors, and workers, that we finish the fight against COVID-19, and that we continue to move forward with reconciliation, and that we grow a diverse and equitable Canada. We can't afford to move backwards, not in the fight against COVID-19 or the climate crisis, not on health care or child care, not for seniors, workers, or families. This is our moment to decide where our country goes from here. This is our time to choose, and this platform is our path ahead for generations to come. Forward or backwards, this is your choice, and with your help and support, we'll move Millwoods forward for everyone.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much, and all the best.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.